We're going to play Thanos in Avengers Infinity.
Thanos is, I'm just starting to understand what a big deal. I want to mention characters and I can't, but...
Josh Brolin wasn't cast as Thanos because he looked intimidating. He was cast because he understood what it feels like to believe something so completely that mercy disappears. Very few actors ever reach that place. Thanos was never meant to scare you with volume or size. He was meant to unsettle you with certainty. The kind that removes mercy, hesitation, and second thoughts. Josh Brolin wasn't chosen to play a monster. He was chosen because he understood what it feels like to believe something so completely that compassion becomes a weakness. Decide this before we continue. Is the most dangerous villain driven by anger or by absolute conviction? Watch this story to the end, because by the conclusion, you'll understand why Thanos didn't feel performed. He felt inevitable. Before Josh Brolin became Thanos, Hollywood never quite knew where to place him. He had all the raw materials studios usually chase. The voice that carried weight even in silence. The physical presence that filled a frame without demanding attention. The kind of face that suggested history, regret, and authority all at once. And yet, his career never followed the smooth, upward curve that defines success in the industry. Early on, Brolin showed promise. Enough to get noticed, enough to be remembered, but not enough to be trusted long-term. Roles came in waves, then disappeared. Studios hesitated. Executives weren't questioning whether he could act. They questioned whether he could be relied upon to anchor something massive. He didn't fit neatly into boxes. Too intense for safe leading roles. Too thoughtful to be a disposable supporting presence. In an industry that thrives on predictability, Brolin felt unresolved. He wasn't chasing fame. He wasn't chasing likability. What he wanted was gravity. Roles that carried consequence. Characters that felt dangerous not because they shouted, but because they believed something deeply. That scared studios. Actors who want meaning over momentum are hard to manage. They don't sell easily. They don't smile on cue. So Hollywood kept him at arm's length. Close enough to use, never close enough to commit to. And Brolin learned to live in that space. The space where nothing is guaranteed, where you survive on conviction instead of momentum. That space would later become familiar to audiences in a very different form. Long before Thanos entered the conversation, Brolin had already lived through collapse and reconstruction, addiction, loss, near misses that could have ended everything quietly. He learned firsthand how fragile reputation is, how fast doors close when you stumble, how little patience the world has for redemption stories while they are still unfinished. Those years didn't romanticize pain for him. They stripped illusions away. Brolin learned that control is temporary, that certainty is rare, that life does not reward good intentions. It rewards resilience. He rebuilt himself slowly, without spectacle. No grand comeback narrative, just discipline, consistency, survival. That process changed how he understood power. Power wasn't dominance anymore, it was endurance. It was the ability to stand inside chaos without losing direction. Brolin carried that understanding into every role afterward. His performances became quieter, more deliberate, less interested in impressing and more focused on convincing. Most actors never touch that depth because they never have to. Their lives move forward. Brolin's had stopped, reversed, and restarted. That gave him something rare. Perspective. When he later portrayed someone who believed destruction was necessary, he didn't need imagination. He understood what it feels like to believe survival justifies unbearable choices. No one casting Thanos knew this yet, but the foundation was already there. When Marvel first introduced Thanos, he wasn't a character. He was a suggestion, a shadow at the edge of a scene, a smile without explanation, a promise with no form. No one knew what kind of villain he would become. No one knew if audiences would care at all. Thanos wasn't designed to be charismatic. He wasn't meant to be loud. He was meant to feel unavoidable, like gravity, like time. something you don't argue with because argument changes nothing. Casting him was a gamble. Motion capture removed the actor's face. Digital layers risked erasing performance entirely. And the greatest risk of all was emotional emptiness. A villain who looks powerful but feels hollow. When Brolin was offered the role, it came without celebration. No guarantees. No assurance that the character would ever be more than a CGI obstacle. Many actors would have passed. Brolin leaned in, because uncertainty was familiar territory. He didn't see Thanos as a monster. He saw him as a man who had already decided. That decision mattered more than spectacle, more than appearance. And Brolin knew how to play belief. Brolin never played Thanos as evil. He played him as resolved, convinced, at peace with his own logic. That was the most dangerous choice possible. There was no shouting, no chaos, no indulgence in cruelty. Every movement was restrained, every word measured. Thanos believed balance required sacrifice, and Brolin treated that belief as sacred. He didn't mock it, he didn't soften it. He let it stand. The calm voice, the controlled posture, the way Thanos spoke as if the outcome was already written. That conviction gave the character weight. Audiences didn't have to agree with Thanos to feel him. They had to recognize him. That recognition made everything uncomfortable. Under the armor was grief. Under the certainty was loss. Under the power was someone who believed suffering had purpose, including his own. That choice transformed a digital villain into something terrifyingly real. When Avengers: Infinity War released, the unexpected happened. The villain didn't just oppose the story, he carried it. Thanos wasn't chasing domination. He was chasing completion. A goal with an endpoint. A purpose that justified the cost. Brolin played him like a protagonist who believed the world was wrong, not him. His pain wasn't decorative, it was central. His loss wasn't a twist, it was payment. And that authenticity unsettled audiences. They didn't cheer, but they understood. Understanding a villain is far more disturbing than fearing one. And Brolin made that unavoidable. In Avengers: Endgame, Thanos changed in a way that was subtle but devastating. The reflective philosopher who once spoke about balance and necessity was gone. In his place stood someone stripped of contemplation, driven purely by outcome. This Thanos no longer wrestled with cost. He no longer mourned what would be lost. He wanted victory, not justification. Josh Brolin adjusted his performance accordingly. The calm that once felt immovable now felt brittle. The certainty that once felt eternal now carried desperation beneath it. You could see it in the posture, in the shortened patience, in the way this Thanos reacted instead of waited. And when he finally fell, the moment refused spectacle. There was no grand speech, no villain's monologue, no roar of rage or defiance, just silence. Because belief without reflection doesn't explode. It collapses inward. Thanos didn't die as a conqueror. He ended as a man who had lost the very meaning that once sustained him. Legends don't need noise when they end. Their absence is loud enough. Josh Brolin didn't become Thanos because he looked intimidating. Many actors could have worn the armor. Many voices could have sounded threatening. He became Thanos because he understood certainty without mercy. Thanos is not defined by destruction. He is defined by belief so rigid that compassion becomes irrelevant. The terrifying idea that suffering is acceptable if the outcome feels necessary. That conviction, once embraced, leaves no room for doubt and no room for turning back. Brolin brought something deeper than menace. He brought grief that never asked for forgiveness. Restraint that made violence feel inevitable rather than explosive. Stillness that suggested decisions had been made long before the story began. He made Thanos human enough to recognize and distant enough to fear. That balance is why the character lingered long after the snap faded from memory. Josh Brolin didn't just play Thanos, he made him inevitable. Thanos didn't terrify the world because he was loud. He terrified it because he was sure. Josh Brolin showed us something uncomfortable. That the most dangerous beliefs don't come from rage. They come from calm certainty. From decisions made so early and held so tightly that mercy never gets a vote. That's the part that lingers after the credits fade. Not the snap, the silence behind it. Now I want to hear from you. Which moment in this story changed how you see Thanos? Was it the restraint, the conviction, or the absence of doubt? Leave your answer in the comments, and if you want more stories that break down why iconic characters actually work, subscribe. Because the villains we remember most aren't the ones who scream, they're the ones who believe.